The word disabled had weight. It did not float lightly through the air like medical terminology was supposed to. It did not soften with repetition. It settled. It pressed down. It lingered long after the doctors left the room. Captain Daniel Hayes had heard it for 9 years. He had heard it from neurologists in Boston, from pediatric specialists in San Diego, from military consultants flown quietly to review scans no one else was permitted to see. Each time the delivery was the same: measured tone, sympathetic eyes, clinical certainty, severe developmental impairment, non-recoverable lower limb paralysis. Different phrases, same ending, permanent. Daniel stood in the consultation room at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center with the stillness of a man who had trained himself never to react before he understood the battlefield. His dress uniform was immaculate. The trident pinned to his chest caught the sterile overhead light. His hands were clasped behind his back, not from ceremony, but from discipline. Across from him, his daughter Lily sat in her wheelchair, 9 years old, composed, quiet in a way children should not be. Her legs rested beneath a hospital blanket patterned in faded blue shapes. They lay still, angled inward slightly, unmoving in a way that had defined her life since infancy. Dr. Raymond Keller adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. Captain Hayes, we've reviewed the most recent imaging. There is no evidence of recoverable motor signal in the lower extremities. At this stage, aggressive intervention would provide no meaningful benefit. Daniel nodded once. He did not blink. He had absorbed worse news under enemy fire. But this was his child. And the recommendation? Daniel asked evenly. Long-term accommodation planning, Keller replied. Physical therapy for maintenance. Supportive care. Supportive care. A gentle way of saying, learn to accept it. Lily stared at the floor. She wasn't crying. She never cried during these meetings. Instead, she withdrew, as if the room were shrinking, as if every word spoken about her erased something invisible inside her. Daniel saw it. He always saw it, but he did not know how to fight it. That was when Emma stopped walking. She had been moving down the corridor with a stack of patient charts tucked against her chest, focused on staying invisible the way new nurses learn to do quickly. 6 weeks into the job, still memorizing names, still careful not to speak unless spoken to, she was calm by nature, but even calm people feel things shift, and something shifted as she passed room 412. The door was open. Voices were low, professional, controlled, but there was tension in the air, tight, coiled, unacknowledged. Emma slowed. She didn't know why at first. Then she saw Lily. Not the wheelchair, not the chart at the foot of the bed. The shoulders, the hands, the way Lily's fingers pressed into her own palms every time the doctor used definitive language. Guarding, not absence. Emma stepped backward, then forward, then into the room. "Excuse me," she said softly. Every head turned. Dr. Keller's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "Yes, I'm Nurse Emma. I just wanted to check if Lily needed anything." It was a harmless sentence. Safe. Dismissible. "That won't be necessary," Keller said. "We're concluding." Emma nodded. Instead, she stepped closer and lowered herself slowly until she was kneeling in front of Lily, eye level. No white coat towering overhead. "Hi," she said gently. Lily blinked. "Hi." Her voice was clear, not strained, not weak. Clear. Emma noticed Daniel watching her, evaluating. She didn't look nervous. She didn't look defiant. She looked attentive. "Lily," Emma asked softly, "when you try to move your legs, what does it feel like?" Dr. Keller exhaled sharply. "That's not appropriate." "Why not?" "Neurological assessments are not conducted through subjective child description," Keller replied evenly. Emma didn't argue. She kept her gaze on Lily. Lily hesitated. "It feels like they're asleep," she whispered. Daniel felt something in his chest tighten. "Asleep how?" Emma asked. Like, like they're still there, just not listening. The room went quiet. Keller shook his head faintly. Children often use imaginative language. Emma rose slowly. Sometimes they use accurate language, she said calmly. We just don't recognize it. Daniel dismissed the meeting soon after. Keller left with restrained irritation. The room emptied. Emma lingered only long enough to meet Daniel's gaze once. There was no arrogance in her expression, only certainty. Then she left. Daniel remained by the window long after. He replayed Lily's words, not listening. He had spent a career training men to listen to their bodies under stress. Pain did not always mean damage. Sometimes it meant memory. He looked at Lily. She shifted slightly in her chair. The smallest movement, so small it could have been missed. But he saw it. For the first time in years, he felt something dangerous rise in his chest. Hope. He did not know yet that the quiet rookie nurse who had asked one simple question had learned techniques in places where medicine was improvised, under gunfire. He did not know that she had reactivated motor pathways in soldiers declared permanently impaired. He did not know that she had signed documents she could never discuss. He only knew one thing. She had looked at his daughter like she wasn't finished, and that was more than anyone else had done. The hospital did not change overnight. The floors were still polished to a muted shine. The scent of antiseptic still lingered in the corridors. Monitors still beeped in steady mechanical rhythm. But beneath the routine, something subtle had shifted. Captain Daniel Hayes felt it before anyone said it. When he arrived the next morning, nurses avoided prolonged eye contact. Conversations near the station dipped in volume as he passed. It wasn't hostility. It was awareness. Something had happened in room 412. Something small. Something disruptive. Emma arrived at 0700 sharp. Hair pulled back into a clean knot. Scrubs pressed. Expression neutral. If anyone had looked closely, they would have seen the faint exhaustion in her eyes. She hadn't slept much. Not because she regretted what she'd done, because she knew what came next. She reached the nurse's station and logged in. 2 minutes later, the senior supervisor approached. Nurse Reyes, conference room 3. Emma nodded once. She didn't ask why. She already knew. The conference room was colder than the hallway. Dr. Raymond Keller stood at the far end of the table, fingers resting flat against polished wood. Beside him sat Patricia Monroe, senior nurse supervisor, and a representative from hospital administration. No one offered Emma a seat. Keller spoke first. You questioned a neurological determination in front of a patient and her guardian. I asked the patient how she experienced her symptoms. That is not your role. Silence. Patricia folded her hands. You're new here, Emma. There's a chain of authority for a reason. Yes, ma'am. You implied misdiagnosis, Keller continued. 18 specialists have evaluated that child. Emma held his gaze. I implied that subjective response might not have been fully explored. Keller's jaw tightened. You have no advanced neurological training. No, sir. No authority to propose alternative theories. No, sir. Keller leaned forward. Then explain to me why you felt qualified to undermine this department. Emma paused. The room expected apology. Instead, she answered calmly, I didn't undermine the department. I observed the patient. Keller exhaled sharply through his nose. That will be your first and final warning. Patricia's voice softened slightly. Do not pursue this further. Do not discuss alternative possibilities with the family. If you feel strongly about exploring neurological rehabilitation, you may submit a proposal through formal channels. Formal channels, paperwork, committees, months. Years. Lily did not have years. Emma nodded. Understood. Keller watched her carefully. You will remain within scope of assigned duties. Nothing more. Yes, sir. She left without another word. Her steps were steady. Inside something else moved. Not anger. Resolve. At 0830, Daniel Hayes requested her by name. The charge nurse hesitated. Captain, Nurse Reyes is on restricted patient interaction pending review. Daniel didn't raise his voice. I'll wait. He stood near the window of room 412. Lily sat by the bed, sunlight touching her hair. When Emma entered, escorted but not restrained, Lily's face changed instantly. You came back, Lily said. I said I would. Daniel studied her again. You've been warned, he said quietly. Yes, sir. And you're still here. Yes, sir. Why? Emma didn't answer immediately. Because the truth was complicated. Because she had learned long ago that hesitation in critical moments cost more than reprimands. Because she had once watched a wounded operator move his fingers again after being told he never would. Because she asked me to come back, Emma said simply. Daniel looked at Lily. Lily nodded. Emma crouched again. Lily, yesterday you said your legs feel asleep. Has that changed? Lily thought carefully. They feel heavy today. Where? Here. Lily tapped above her knee. Emma noted the exact location. High quadriceps cluster. Common suppression site in trauma-induced neural guarding. Daniel caught the way her eyes sharpened. You've seen this before, he said. Emma's expression did not change. Yes. Where? She hesitated. Overseas. Daniel's posture shifted slightly. Military. Humanitarian deployment. Technically true. She did not add attached to forward surgical units embedded with Tier 1 operators. She did not add field neuromuscular reactivation under fire. She did not add techniques never published, because she couldn't. The door opened sharply. Dr. Keller stepped in. I was clear yesterday. Daniel straightened. Doctor, I invited her. Keller ignored him, focusing on Emma. You are not authorized to conduct neurological evaluation. I'm not conducting evaluation, she replied calmly. I'm listening. That is enough. Lily shrank slightly at the tension. Daniel noticed. His voice lowered, controlled. Doctor, if you're certain of your diagnosis, then one nurse asking questions should not threaten it. Keller stiffened. This is not a debate. No, Daniel agreed quietly. It's my daughter. The room went still. Emma felt the shift. She knew this was the moment. The line. She could step back, remain safe, keep her job. Or she could act. 5 minutes, she said evenly. Keller looked at her as if she had overstepped reality. Excuse me? 5 minutes. No equipment. No promises. If nothing happens, I step away permanently. Daniel's eyes locked onto hers. He recognized that tone. Men spoke like that before breaching doors. Keller hesitated. He should have refused. Instead, ego made him nod. 5 minutes. Emma moved slowly. She did not rush. She did not dramatize. She knelt before Lily again. I'm going to ask you to do something different, she said softly. Lily nodded. Don't try to move. Just imagine moving. Keller folded his arms. Daniel watched like a man witnessing controlled demolition. Emma placed 2 fingers lightly along a precise point, above Lily's ankle. Not pushing, not forcing, stimulating. The pressure angle was exact, a method used to trigger proprioceptive awareness through tactile cueing, a method developed in combat rehabilitation scenarios where speed mattered more than policy. Just think about it, Emma whispered. 30 seconds passed. Nothing. Keller exhaled in quiet dismissal. Then, Lily's toes twitched, so slight it could have been imagined. But Daniel saw it. Emma didn't react. Good, she said gently. Again, Lily's brow furrowed. Her foot shifted, clear, intentional. Daniel dropped to one knee beside her. Lily? Keller stepped forward sharply. That's reflex. Emma looked up calmly. Then it will happen again. She adjusted her hand slightly. A different nerve cluster. Another microstimulation point. Lily inhaled sharply, Her leg lifted. Not far, not strong, but lifted. The room went silent. Daniel's breath left him like he'd been struck. Keller stared. That's not possible. Emma stood slowly. It just happened. The 5 minutes were over. The line had been crossed, and nothing inside Walter Reed would be the same again. The hospital moved quickly when certainty cracked. By mid-morning, room 412 was no longer quiet. Word had spread, not loudly, not recklessly, but through the subtle network of glances and half-finished sentences that carry shock faster than announcements ever could. A child previously declared permanently disabled had moved, not reflexively, not accidentally, deliberately. Administration did what institutions do when faced with disruption. They organized. At 1300 hours, Lily Hayes was transferred to a formal neurological evaluation suite. White walls, mounted cameras, motion sensors calibrated to detect minute muscle activation. Observation glass lining one side of the room. Captain Daniel Hayes stood in the corner, arms folded, posture rigid. He had stood in rooms like this before, rooms where decisions were made that affected lives. But this time he was not the one in command. Lily sat in a specialized therapy chair at the center of the room. Her feet rested on padded supports. She looked small against the equipment. Dr. Keller stood opposite her, clipboard in hand, expression carefully neutral. Behind the glass, department heads gathered. Legal advisors. A federal oversight representative, Dr. Elaine Foster, observed quietly, hands clasped before her. Emma was not present. She had been ordered to remain outside. Baseline motor response test. Keller announced for the record. A technician adjusted sensors along Lily's calves. Lily, Keller began. Voice calm but clipped. I want you to lift your right foot. Lily swallowed. She tried. Nothing happened. Keller made a small notation. Again. Lily concentrated harder. Her shoulders tensed. Her jaw clenched. Nothing. Daniel felt the familiar tightening in his chest. He knew what Keller was doing. Resetting the narrative. Left foot, Keller instructed. Again, nothing. Behind the glass, one of the administrators shifted, as if relief were already forming. Keller lowered his clipboard slightly. For documentation purposes, he said evenly, previous observed movement appears inconsistent under controlled condition. Daniel's hands curled into fists. Then Lily spoke. When Nurse Emma was here, she didn't tell me to move. The room stilled. Keller frowned. That's irrelevant. She told me to think about moving, Lily continued quietly, and she touched my ankle like it mattered. Daniel looked toward the observation glass. Dr. Foster leaned closer to the microphone system. Dr. Keller. Her voice came through the speaker, calm and measured. Step back. Keller blinked. Excuse me? You are introducing performance pressure. Step back. He did not like being corrected publicly, but federal oversight outranked departmental pride. Reluctantly, he stepped aside. The room shifted. Lily exhaled. Daniel felt something change. Bring Nurse Reyes in, Foster instructed. Emma entered without haste. She did not look triumphant. She did not look nervous. She simply walked to Lily's side and knelt. Hi, she said gently. Lily smiled faintly. Hi. Emma did not touch her immediately. She didn't look at the cameras. She didn't acknowledge the observers. She focused solely on the child. Remember what we talked about? She asked softly. Lily nodded. Don't try, Emma said. Just notice. Behind the glass, Keller watched with narrowed eyes. Emma placed 2 fingers lightly above Lily's ankle. The angle was precise. The pressure minimal, a technique developed for reestablishing disrupted motor and tension pathways. Used rarely, taught almost never. Just think, Emma murmured. Lily closed her eyes. The room seemed to hold its breath. 5 seconds. 10. Then her toes curled. Clear, measured. A technician gasped softly. Keller stiffened. Emma didn't move. Again, she whispered. Lily inhaled, her right foot lifted. Off the support. 3 inches. Controlled, Daniel staggered backward and caught himself against the wall. Behind the glass, silence fell heavy. Motion sensors recorded activation patterns lighting up across Lily's lower limb network. Signals previously declared dormant. Higher, Foster said quietly through the speaker. Emma adjusted her hand slightly, stimulating another point. Your body remembers, she told Lily calmly. You're safe. Lily's leg rose again. Higher this time. Not a reflex, not a spasm. A command executed. Tears spilled down Daniel's face. He did not wipe them away. Keller's clipboard lowered slowly. That's not possible, he muttered. Emma looked at him for the first time. It's happening anyway. No one declared victory. No one apologized. Institutions rarely move that quickly. Instead, Lily was transferred to a private observation suite, restricted access, limited personnel. Daniel remained at her side. Emma was temporarily reinstated for controlled supervision purposes, a compromise born of necessity. But outside that room, forces were already moving. Dr. Foster requested Emma's full personnel file. The file arrived thin, basic nursing school credentials, standard background checks, nothing remarkable. Foster frowned. She made a call. 2 hours later, a secondary file was transmitted. Redacted sections, classification stamps, temporary attachments to overseas humanitarian missions funded through Joint Operations Initiatives. Foster read quietly. Neural reactivation protocols under combat conditions. Field neuromuscular reintegration. Emergency rehabilitation for operators declared medically separated. No publications. No formal accreditation. Just outcomes. Successful. She looked up. Who is this nurse? She murmured. Inside Lily's room, something else was happening. Lily lay back against the pillows, exhausted but smiling. I felt it, she whispered again. Daniel knelt beside her. You did. Emma stood near the window, hands folded loosely before her. Daniel looked at her. You've done this before. Yes, with soldiers. A pause. Yes. Why didn't you say? Emma met his gaze. Because this isn't about me. Daniel studied her. He had commanded men in firefights. He had seen courage under pressure. He recognized it now. Not loud, not dramatic, but absolute. A knock sounded at the door. Dr. Foster entered. 2 men followed. Civilian suits, military posture, eyes that assessed everything. One of them spoke. You learned that technique overseas. It wasn't a question. Emma didn't answer. Daniel stepped forward slightly. If this is about policy, it's about jurisdiction, the man replied evenly. Silence. Foster's expression sharpened. Lily Hayes is a patient, she said firmly, not a research subject. The suited man nodded slowly. But Nurse Reyes is not just a nurse. Daniel's eyes shifted to Emma. She stood still, not defensive, not proud, just steady. The second man spoke quietly. Attached medical specialist to Joint Special Operations Command Rehabilitation Units, field credentialed. Tier 1 clearance. Daniel felt the weight of that settle. You were with SEAL teams, he said softly. Emma nodded once. Yes. Reactivating operators declared permanently impaired. A small pause. Yes? Daniel looked at Lily, then back at Emma. And you never thought that mattered. Emma's answer was simple. It matters now. By nightfall, imaging confirmed what no one wanted to say out loud. Dormant neural pathways were activating, consistently, under specific stimulation. The word misdiagnosis hovered unspoken. Dr. Keller sat alone in his office. Lily's file open before him. 18 signatures. And yet, he had never once asked how her body felt. He closed the file slowly. For the first time in his career, certainty felt fragile. Inside the private suite, Lily tried again. With assistance. With supervision. Her foot moved. Then her leg. Small increments, but real. Daniel stood nearby, hands trembling slightly. He had faced gunfire without flinching. This shook him more. Emma monitored quietly, never pushing too far, never rushing. You don't force a system that's relearning trust, she told Daniel quietly. He nodded. Outside the hospital, news had not yet broken. But inside, momentum had begun. And momentum, once started, is difficult to contain. What none of them realized yet was that Lily's movement was only the beginning. Because once the military understood exactly what Emma had just done inside those white walls, they would not simply thank her. They would come. The hospital was no longer operating in isolation. By dawn, black SUVs lined the far end of the staff parking lot. They did not arrive with sirens. They did not announce themselves. They simply appeared. Two naval officers in dress whites entered through the secured entrance. Their posture was unmistakable. Behind them walked a civilian with a Department of Defense identification badge clipped discreetly inside his jacket pocket. Inside, administrators were already waiting. Dr. Keller had not slept. Dr. Foster stood at the head of the conference table. Emma had been asked to attend. She arrived without escort, without visible reaction. Captain Daniel Hayes stood beside her, uniform pressed, eyes sharp. The senior naval officer spoke first. "We're here regarding Nurse Emma Reyes." Silence filled the room. Dr. Keller folded his hands. "She violated protocol." The officer cut him off without raising his voice. "Her record indicates prior attachment to Joint Special Operations Command rehabilitation units." The words hung in the air like a flare. Keller blinked. "That's impossible. Her personnel file is redacted." The civilian official finished calmly. Dr. Foster glanced toward Emma. "You didn't disclose this." Emma met her gaze evenly. "It wasn't relevant to my position." Daniel looked at her slowly. "You were embedded with Tier 1 units." "Yes, sir." "Field medicine? Neuromuscular reactivation. Combat rehabilitation." Keller's composure fractured slightly. "That technique is not recognized in standard neurology." The naval officer's eyes hardened. "It's recognized by the men who walked again because of it." Silence. The civilian official opened a thin folder and slid it across the table toward Dr. Foster. Inside were brief summaries. No names, just designations. Operator Alpha 3, lower limb motor suppression post-blast injury, reactivated under field neural stimulus protocol. Operator Echo 7, declared permanently impaired, regained assisted mobility within 8 weeks. Operator Sierra 2, returned to active advisory status following reactivation therapy. Each case marked Lead Specialist, Reyes E. Keller's throat tightened. "You're telling me this nurse has been performing experimental neurological procedures on Special Forces operators?" Emma spoke calmly. "Nothing experimental. It's a reactivation technique focused on neural inhibition, not structural damage." Dr. Foster leaned forward. "Explain." Emma folded her hands loosely. "In high-stress trauma, especially early in development or under acute injury, the brain can suppress motor pathways as a protective response. The pathways aren't destroyed, they're dormant. But if every evaluation reinforces incapacity, suppression becomes permanent." Keller stiffened. "You're suggesting we reinforced paralysis?" "I'm suggesting," Emma said evenly, "that we never asked her body what it remembered." Silence. The naval officer spoke again. "Captain Hayes has filed a formal objection to the initial permanent disability classification." Daniel nodded once. "Yes, sir." "And the imaging now confirms motor activation," the civilian added. Dr. Foster inhaled slowly. "So the hospital's original conclusion was premature," Daniel finished quietly. No one argued. Because they couldn't. Outside the conference room, Lily stood for 3 seconds unaided. It was not graceful. Her knees trembled. Her balance wavered, but she stood. Daniel had his hands hovering near her shoulders, ready to catch her if she fell. Emma stayed near her hips, steady but not gripping. "You're safe," Emma murmured. Lily's face was lit with disbelief. "I'm tall," she whispered. Daniel's chest tightened. "Yes," he said softly. "You are." When Lily sat back down, exhausted but smiling, Daniel stepped into the hallway. He found Emma alone near the window. "You didn't tell us who you were," he said quietly. Emma watched the sunrise edge over the hospital buildings. "Because I'm a nurse. You were attached to my community." "Yes." "You helped SEAL operators walk again." "Yes." "And you never thought to mention that?" Emma turned slightly toward him. "Your daughter didn't need my resume. She needed someone to listen." Daniel swallowed hard. He had led men into firefights. He had given orders that determined life or death, and yet he had nearly accepted a permanent verdict for his own child, without questioning it further. "Why leave that world?" he asked. Emma's gaze returned to the horizon. "Because sometimes the war follows people home, and sometimes it starts in hospitals." By afternoon, the hospital board convened an emergency review session. Dr. Keller was asked to present the original evaluation process. He stood before them, composed but subdued. "We followed established neurological assessment standards," he said. "Did you conduct subjective motor perception inquiry?" one board member asked. "No." "Did you test for suppression versus structural loss?" The imaging showed no active signal. "And after Nurse Reyes's intervention?" Keller hesitated. "Signal activation was present." The room was silent. Dr. Foster spoke calmly. "The question is not whether protocol was followed. The question is whether protocol was sufficient." Keller's shoulders sagged almost imperceptibly. He had built a career on certainty. Certainty now felt brittle. That evening, something unexpected happened. Lily asked to try walking. "Just one step," she said. Daniel hesitated. "Are you sure?" Lily nodded. Emma positioned herself carefully. "Weight forward," she instructed gently. "Not forcing, just shifting." Lily leaned. Her right foot pressed into the floor. Then her left. She took one step. Daniel felt the world tilt, then another. She laughed, a sound so bright and unrestrained it echoed off the sterile walls. Nurses gathered in the doorway. No one applauded, no one spoke. They simply watched, because something sacred was happening, and they knew it. Later that night, Dr. Keller submitted his resignation. He did not argue. He did not blame. He wrote only one sentence in his letter: "I allowed certainty to replace curiosity." The hospital accepted it quietly, but outside the hospital walls, the story did not stay contained. A therapist, overwhelmed by what she had witnessed, shared a short clip with a colleague. Within hours, the footage reached someone in military communications. By morning, inquiries were flooding in. Is this the same Reyes who was embedded with JSOC? Was this field neural stimulus protocol? Is it replicable? Media vans began to appear outside Walter Reed. Daniel watched the growing attention with unease. Emma watched it with something else: distance. Dr. Foster called her into her office. "They want you to teach this," Foster said plainly. "Teach what?" "The technique." Emma shook her head slightly. "It's not a technique you standardize." "Why not?" "Because it only works if you see the person first. The moment it becomes checklist medicine, it fails." Foster studied her. "You're aware this could change neurological rehabilitation nationwide?" "Yes." "And you're walking away?" Emma hesitated. She thought of desert clinics, of wounded operators staring at their own unmoving limbs with quiet devastation, of the moment hope flickered back into their eyes. "I'm not walking away," she said softly. "I'm staying where I'm needed." 3 months later, Lily walked onto a small elementary school stage, unassisted. Not running, not perfect, but walking. Daniel sat in the front row. When Lily's name was called for the science fair, she stood tall. The audience rose with her. In the back of the room, unnoticed, stood a woman in simple scrubs. Hair tied back, badge still reading nurse. No medals, no announcement. She smiled quietly. Then she slipped out before anyone could thank her publicly, because she had never done this for recognition. She had done it because a child said her legs felt asleep, and she refused to believe sleep meant gone.